Hey, and how are you doing? Welcome back to another Essential Talks where you stay for the conversation and you leave empowered. Tonight, we have a really good conversation that we're going to be having, seeing how this world has become kind of upside down and a lot of things to navigate through. Our discussion this evening is going to be about navigating through work environment and being forced into things you may not want to do, utilizing your rights for exemptions and so on. So again, this is going to be a great discussion because we're watching all kinds of stuff happen around us. Ukraine, monkeypox. Next will probably be chickenpox and crockpox and all kinds of other pox. But until then, let's back up and we'll go through some of the vaccine mandates that have come out and get into somebody's live story about some of the work environment and navigation they've had to go through, just concerning these mandates. So we got Jordan here with us, a good friend of ours, who's going to be talking about some of the hoops he's had put in front of him and what he's had to do to get to where he is. So Jordan, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll start going from there.
Well, thank you, Jessica and Jamie, for having me. I don't know where to start on myself. I live in Hamilton, Ontario. I recently got my motorcycle license. I used to be more physically active when we could play sports and kind of socialize together. That's about it in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome. I really like that intro. That was perfect, short and sweet. Yeah. So your experience. So you had you were suggested to us by Kim in terms of like the experience that you've been going through. So she let us know that you're working for one of the major telecoms company that's operating in Canada, and that you were just placed in an extremely uncomfortable situation. So from the beginning, do you mind just walking us through what happened?
So Kim and I have maintained contact. We used to work together almost a decade ago in the hospitality industry, and seeing her be involved with everything related to the Freedom Convoy to, I guess if you could qualify it as a movement, she's been a pillar of strength for me in terms of helping me stick to my guns, if you will. So I guess to start at the beginning, when I came onto this particular employment situation in April of 2021. So nothing was really changing or getting worse at that point. There was an obvious emphasis in terms of getting vaccinated and a policy that came out requiring it. So in the beginning, there was accommodations that were outlined as being achievable, although at this stage, it being like May 2022, I don't know that anybody else there is still on payroll that doesn't have a medical exemption. So when I first challenged it, it was under the guise of the fertility aspect. So my partner and I are mid-30s. We're looking towards starting a family, knowing what we knew at the time, and without getting into the politics or the science of it. This was just a brand new technology, so quick to market, and brought to you by, the same entities that are, maybe responsible for the opiate crisis that we're experiencing here, or in Pfizer's case, at least. I think if you Google who's paid the biggest criminal settlement in the history of the United States, like if they're not number one, they are in the top two.
Yeah. So 2.8 billion.
So we had some reservations related to that, and then some other things that didn't make sense to me as well, like the rollout of masks, and not that a fitted N95 or something like that wouldn't have an effect. Like I could go along with something like that in a respiratory virus situation, but I mean, like, that they were just saying anything would do, like put a bandana over your face and you're fine.
2 layers of cotton, and that's what's in underwear. So I'm just like, it's like wearing underwear on your face. I can't get over it.
So actually, and I actually ended up wearing my girlfriend's underwear to get access to a grocery store one of the times, just to demonstrate how ridiculous this all is.
That's incredible.
And anyway, so back to the employment situation. We had met with our family doctor and discussed this, and our family doctor at that time was not on board. She, to her credit, did listen to us. She didn't validate the concerns per se, but she, in just listening, that element was reassuring in the environment of things where everybody else was getting a stark no. You're wrong. Trust the science. Things like that. So she had set up for us a fertility appointment. So I filled out the necessary paperwork on my end to move forward with an exemption based on concerns about fertility. That was denied before the fertility appointment with the specialist was allowed to happen. So that was interesting, because it was like, okay, well, who is making that decision on our side?
And that was your workplace denying it? The validity of it? Okay.
That's correct. So then there was a second option, and this is where things like started to heat up in the like the temperature of the conversation rose. So instead of being weary, you were immediately anti-vax, or pro-Trump, or far right, or like whatever kind of buzzword that people could, a grandma killer, right? So the temperature of the conversation is getting hotter, and people that I knew that were sharing like concerns were flirting with the idea of doing a religious exemption. I didn't want to go down that road because I don't know how to justify it, and I heard that the evidence you would have to provide in support of that was really was overbearing. Sorry, we almost lost power here. So I decided to go through the protected grounds. And in my observable reality, those changed, because it used to include something to do with vaccination status. You couldn't be discriminated against that in Ontario, but throughout the last 2 years, I don't see the same wording in the legislation anymore.
Yes, conscientious objector. Like, you can't be a conscientious objector anymore. It's just like the only way was medical or religious, and it's like, yes, but what if I just don't personally want this? Like, I have bodily autonomy, and I always did, and I always should. So why does that suddenly stop for this idea that something experimental suddenly cuts that? It just, honestly, absolutely boggling. So I'm completely on your side on that one.
Well, this went a little bit deeper in that, like, I guess the word would be more granular. So you had to identify what specific protected grounds were being infringed upon, why you felt that those protected grounds were being infringed upon because of a vaccination policy, and then provide supporting evidence for your perspective based on the information that you were providing to them. So I did all that. And again, that was denied. So I had suffered from myopericarditis a decade before, and it almost cost me my life. So I was admitted to the hospital. I've never seen the report still to this day from the cardiologist. But when I discharged myself from that situation, they couldn't tell me why. They assumed that it was viral related, but it was basically my body's inflammatory response to some sort of pathogen inside. And having that in my back pocket, my employer had, we're getting closer to Christmas time. So this is like probably beginning to mid-December, where they said, you know what, no more accommodations. as of February 1st, you're going to be put on unpaid leave, and then you'll be terminated. So I played my hand at that, and it was a last-ditch effort. I didn't think that my doctor would support this, and I knew at that point that my doctor couldn't write me an exemption by herself. She needed to have a secondary supporting specialist opinion, either infectious disease specialist or, in my case, a cardiologist, or I think whatever the title is for people that deal with allergies. So anaphylaxis and myoimpericarditis seem to be the only three that you could get a medical exemption based around. But the myoimpericarditis were added late to that list after we saw, some signal, I suppose, with the mRNA vaccines. So I asked my doctor, because this is, Christmas. So she's on holidays. She got back in probably mid-January. So the clock is like ticking. And I said to her, like, listen, I'm just going to go ahead and do this because I have a mortgage. Like, I have not a dependent, but like we're trying to build something here. So start a family and things like that. There's a lot more than just my personal principles. So she advised me not to, and said that it was her responsibility to do her due diligence on that side. So she procured my report from Credit Valley Hospital here in Mississauga and forwarded that information off to a cardiologist. In the meantime, my employer is, you have to provide proof of your medical exemption before the cutoff date. So that was impossible. And to their credit, they worked past that cutoff date. But the stress and anxiety of the situation was, every time I moved that needle, it was kicking the can down the road a matter of days. And at the point where I was able to provide this to them, it was feeling like it was getting to the end of that rope, we'll just say. And then what they wanted was my doctor's validation for my concern, the cardiologist's validation of that concern, and my cardiologist's report from my episode of myoimpericarditis, which I couldn't provide, but that I think is still outgoing. And then we were able to get a cardiologist on board begrudgingly. She said that her own personal opinion, it wouldn't necessarily affect me, or it wasn't a big enough signal for her to suggest that I'd be injured by this. But at this point, my doctor had kind of started to turn a corner, because she said, there's almost all risk and no reward. So throughout all of this, I also had, can we say COVID?
Yeah, go for
it.
it.
Right? And my employer wanted me to prove it. So that was an antigen test, which was the first indicator or whatever, because if it was symptoms wise, I'd said to my boss, like, hey, I would have gone to work. If this was 2019, I would have showed up and just bumped elbows with people and been like, hey, I got a little bit of a head cold, whatever, stay your distance. But that didn't suffice. So I had to go get a PCR test. And in December, they were only doing that in pockets around, I don't know, our municipality here. I had to go from Hamilton to Brampton to get it done. So that tested positive too. So there you go. And then that wasn't enough. I had to have my doctor confirm the diagnosis for them. So checked all those boxes. But like, yes, I've had the vid. I've recovered. I'm okay. But I don't have the shots because of this pending specialists, I guess, investigation as to whether or not that I have a higher chance of having one of these adverse reactions. That was that was the that should have been the end, but it wasn't, because things actually got more screwed up for me there after I provided the cardiologist's note, my doctor's note, saying that I required a medical exemption. So they granted my medical exemption, and in the same response said, kind of status quo things in a corporate environment, like I have to complete twice weekly testing, in addition to mandatory masking, physical distance, and now I had to participate in a daily COVID screening thing, all of which I was never doing before. I was the most customer-facing rep in 2021 that I was aware of in Canada Central, and it's just a few more hoops to jump through, but c'est la vie. What they attached to that same response was they told me I needed to provide them authorization to communicate directly with my cardiologist, and that blurb that they sent me was for my complete medical file. And this was within 24 hours of obtaining my exemption and thinking, finally, I can put this behind me and, move on with my life. Because from April to December, it felt like there was a rope around my neck, and like it's just a matter of time until the stool falls out from under my feet. So I said no. I expressed to them that, I hope that our back and forth throughout the matter of months at this point, through HR and now through the disabilities claims team, I hope that built confidence that I would continue to cooperate, but I will continue to be the liaison between my employment and my medical information. And I sent that off and got a response within 24 hours again saying, fine, then you have to have this signed off by your cardiologist. And it is, can Jordan take Novavax? Yes. Or can Jordan not take Novavax? No. And a bunch of blank lines for why. So I went on Canada's Public Health and looked up Novavax. So I told them it's only approved in 2 countries, and maybe this gets fact checked, but at this time it was Canada and Australia only. The adverse reactions were the same. So myopericarditis is on that list. Also on Canada's public health website, it says it's not proven safe for people who have recovered from COVID, which is also concerning. And then my 4th point was, listen, it has not even been 72 hours between the time that you guys provided me my medical exemption. I am not going to bug my cardiologist or my MD anymore, taking time away from them doing their actual jobs, unless you tell me specifically why I need to do that, and I want it in writing.
Yeah.
And that was the last that I've talked to them about that.
Yep. Wow. Damn straight. How dare they? Like, you're going to show me the law that allows you to even ask for this, because I can show you many laws that do not give you that power to do so. And for you to even ask for that kind of permission is absolutely beyond the scope of your authority, or even
your special.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, this is, you're not in the medical profession. You're not in anything that revolves any kind of high risk people, really. Like you were saying, you're in sales, in telecoms. Like, it's just like, that's neither here nor there to know your full medical history. And I'd like to know the doctor on staff that's going to be qualified enough to actually even translate that information, because it sounds to me that that's going to go somewhere else to places unknown, and it's your personal medical data. So that's unbelievable. So did you have anything else to add to that? Or are we able to open up for questions right now?
You can open up for questions. I mean, there was throughout this, it was confusing to me in terms of like HR was dealing with it when it wasn't a medical exemption request. Then it got shifted over to the disability side. And the disability side is for accommodations that are within a certain amount of time. So that part was confusing because there's no amount of time that makes it safe for me to go do this based on past medical history. So that's out the window. But now the evolution of this was I actually have this employer hawking medical decisions, like hawking medical advice. And so what's next? So we covered Novavax. That's a no. What about prophylaxis Pfizer pills? What about, 8,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day? Like, who knows how long that list goes for them? But again, to your point, what authority are they making that decision? And are they meeting in a dark room? Do they have doctors on staff? Do they have specialists that are, providing a qualified medical opinion? Or are they just doing the right thing?
Yes, and it's just like by providing the requirement basically that you get this thing, it's like, but you're not a doctor, so how can you provide medical advice without having any kind of like a doctorate at all in this medical practice? That's basically impersonating a medical practitioner, which is against the law. So at that point, these are really very, very gray areas that they're dabbling in, on the reliance that they're not going to have to pay for any consequence from that because they have protection from daddy governments. So yeah, it's a pretty incredible situation.
So I will add to that point because like this, I did try to escalate this. So this particular telecom has an emphasis on mental health. They posit themselves as champions of mental health. So in the midst of Mental Health Month, then it just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. So constructively, I reached back out to the HR arm and said, listen, my direct report is no longer here. So I don't want to be insubordinate, but I would like to constructively escalate my concerns and speak to my journey a little bit because it has not been conducive of a mentally healthy environment, to say the least. Like the employment aspect is one arm of this, but like so many other people that have had these kinds of even employment related scenarios, it affects your relationship with your partner. It affects your ability to buy Christmas gifts. It affects your identity to some point. Like my work and my ability to make money based on my skill sets is like intrinsic to me. And that all gets, that's the ripple effect that this caused anyways. So I explained this to, that HR person said that there wasn't a suitable way of escalating this and that I should reach out directly. So we set up a call directly. And to their credit, they listened to that. And I brought up a point where I think they tried to get their hooks in and said, like, this is affecting my ability to stay motivated and productive. And it was kind of like a gotcha moment because to them, they think this is a choice. And I think we're well beyond the understanding that this isn't a choice, this is coercion. And I said, well, you're aware of my compensation structure. Like I actually have to be employed for the last day of the quarter in order to get any commissions. So if that's the case, and I'm, staring down the barrel of a gun, I don't know that I'm ever going to make it there. So forget all the distracting background noise. Like, how do you just wake up every day and be like, hey, they're coming for me, but I really want to go out there and kick some ass today. Like it put my head through like a whirlwind. And that's why I wanted to share this, is because I know in retrospect, I've had it easy in terms of the people that have lost their jobs or the people that didn't have a medical situation that they could fall back on and utilize to get that exemption. I've talked to people that are still inside there that feel like they compromised their identity, that they were principally opposed to this, and then just did it for a paycheck, and then was like, shit, I don't know who I am anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yes. Now, through this, we did have a question in the comments asking if you've thought about any legal aspects or like lawsuit, human rights suit. Is that something that you're able to speak on? And if so, what has that process looked like?
So I don't know what that process would look like. Through private litigation, you're not going to win against, a company of this size. Maybe they pay you a settlement and have you sign an NDA and you shut your mouth forever about it. I think you have an option here in Ontario to file suit through the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal if you've been discriminated against, and that medical component would be a contributor to whether or not I had a case for discrimination. But they haven't taken disciplinary action against me, so the answer is no. But I also wouldn't trust the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal to take that forward constructively, because looking at the courts, the way that it's going with is it Brian Picton, that constitutional challenge related to mobility rights. It's just delay after delay after delay, and then they'll just wait you out. So I've seen the legal system operate that way unfairly. And have I thought about it? Yes. Do I have any confidence that it would manifest into something with a positive outcome? No. And then lastly, that's not the point. I don't want to monetize the situation. I want to bring to light that this is going on, that this is affecting real, ordinary Canadian people, and people across the world. And without the opportunity to tell the story, people just feel so isolated. And that's really what's damaged everybody from the last 2 years, right? Is that isolation, socially, professionally, and the rest.
Yes. So apart from a lawsuit, did you try to retain any legal assistance at all just to help you through this?
I won't speak to that, but
that's totally
I think
fine.
in not doing that, it tells you.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. How has the work environment been for you since in the past, in the past while here?
I mean, added restrictions, the daily screenings. I mean, I've represented at the front end, and I would continue to do this. And I've told them this, that I will be transparent with customers or anybody that I engage with, going above and beyond and volunteering that on the front end, just so that you can make your own risk assessment. And I understand that certain people might have, vulnerabilities or things like that they're still concerned about. And where do I fit into that? It's not my business. So what is my business is to represent, hey, I'm not vaccinated. If you have an issue with that, then we can do this remotely or over Zoom or, one of those other video mediums. But it hasn't come up from a peer-to-peer aspect or a customer aspect. It is only a top-down driven directive. So I can't or wasn't able to participate in some of the team building stuff. We have associations with different sporting events, venues, and things of that nature. So I wasn't able to attend that and participate.
Gotcha.
Yeah, see, I find this all funny because, before all this COVID stuff, your employer couldn't even ask you for a doctor's note.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden they're able to do all of these things that trample over everything. And we've witnessed them change the definition of words, and the human rights has also been changing definitions of some of the things that they have in there to make sure that they're kind of entangling us longer. And this is where, like, sharing your story is a great opportunity for others that have gone through the same struggles or similar struggles, that they can actually start to, get together and accomplish taking on some of these Goliath companies or even smaller companies. And I believe this is where we all got to kind of band together to do that, because as soon as one of us breaks through and sets a precedent, it's going to wave across, because this is clear violation. Like you did mention, as you're explaining things, that you didn't have a clear discrimination, but those that got terminated because they weren't vaccinated, that's clearly discrimination, right? There's no evidence or proof that they can come out with that's solid, that's saying that it's less risky. And when you start going to Health Canada and Health Ontario, and you start looking at the actual stats of people that are in ICUs and being hospitalized, is a clearly different perspective than what they're saying over the radio. So I believe radio is entertainment, and they're allowed to bend the truth or switch the numbers around. But when they're giving the actual fact on the database of the websites, they have to be factual, and that's where you find the hardcore evidence.
Well, that's what I represented to the HR, was that what was talked about in the town hall that we had in January was our, now we're getting into muddy water, our president relaying information that in his inner circle, everybody seemed to get COVID over Christmas time with the Omicron phenomenon. And that might, same, I ruined Christmas.
My whole group of friends, everybody.
Everybody.
Vaxxed or not. And it was just really interesting seeing who recovered sooner than other people who had their shots and didn't recover that quickly. And other people were like, didn't get their shots and were not fine, but it was a flu, basically. It was a flu, and got over it. Nothing. Yeah. So,
well, what was represented was that, you might not think it's effective, but it's still the best course of action. And then some brave soul asked, well, given that everybody has had 2 shots and everybody still got COVID, is there an expectation that the booster would be made part of this policy? And they said yes, that's reasonable expectation. Now, that hasn't been done yet, but for those that got 2 and then aren't sure, like, would you get the 3rd one? And then you're adding a greater percentage, I think, in terms of people that are skeptical. But from the top down side, it is still being represented that this is the only way forward. And that was January. So the difference between January and now May, it's a completely different environment. I don't think that you can skirt around the issue that, hey, if you had to get 4, or some people even 5 shots in 16 months, like, I'm sorry, I think that's a shit product. That is no longer comparable to measles or polio or my bloody vaccine schedule, which I have had. Like, I am not anti-vax.
Me neither.
I'm
not anti-vax. I think that there's a place there's a place and time for many different medical things, and so long as we have some viable data on stuff, then we're fine. But it's exactly like you said. It was the lack thereof. There was, the information sheet that came with the shots is completely blank. Things like that. How, like, even my own doctor was just like, oh yeah, completely fine. Yeah, no problems. Because I'm not concerned. Like, we don't have kids yet. We're planning on having children. And I was like, well, there really isn't that much data. Oh no, completely fine. And just the way that she waved it off, I'm like, but how do you know that? There's literally no way you could. So if you can't know that, like I can't know that, how can you possibly give that assessment unless what is guiding you through that? What is guiding you to tell me that that's okay? Is it because you heard from someone else that's okay? Because as far as the data is showing, there is no data. So you can't tell me that it's okay, that it's completely risk-free. That's impossible.
And my doctor, to her credit, walked us through that. So while, like, I'm not going to get in a pissing contest about who knows what about medical information with the doctor. I'm not going to do that. I see in the notes here, the Pfizer pages, like, we could all spend a decade going through all of that stuff. And like I guess everybody's now an expert on the science. Everybody's reading scientific studies and whatever. Just they have just this list of them that back up their personal perspective, which is fantastic. But if my employer or somebody there is listening to this, what I would hope is that it encourages an environment of change, in that while I want to believe that this was done in good faith, what hasn't been done is them opening the door to those that were laid off or a victim of this, or terminated, because we've seen certain companies here in Canada that have put that out right away. As soon as the environment of things started to change, they said, well, just we're welcoming all of you guys back. And that hasn't been done in this case. So it feels less and less like this is the good faith way of going forward, the longer this gets dragged out.
Gotcha. That's a good way to point it out. Yes. Yes, I'm sure there's actually many people that are in a couple of different positions of, like, federal level employment and stuff like that, where it is exactly the same, that we've kind of, I think we've gotten past this point now. People who were afraid of getting COVID have now, a lot of them have gotten it. If they didn't get it in the December, January wave, there was one that just went through in the springtime, and there's even another one going through now. So it's just, like, again, and then with the way the evolution of different countries approach, saying that, this is something we just have to learn to live with. So if that's the case, like, when did they never in the past made flu shots mandatory. It was suggested based off of your own personal preference and your risk level and what you're willing to do. And some people got it, some people didn't. My parents all got it every year. I didn't. And besides getting COVID in January, the last time I had a flu was, I don't even know, like, I think it was before I was even married, so like over 5 years previous. And so I just, if you're not in a high risk group, then I don't feel like exactly what we said, the risk analysis, would I take something that is not tested to the extent that it should have been, in my opinion, to combat against something that I'm really not at risk to have serious problems from. And if I did have serious problems from it, that's my own story. That's my own choice. I can, you said that and not to bring it up like this, but, motorcycles are dangerous. Everyone knows that. And we all take our risks and we live with the consequences of our actions. And you're allowed to do that. So I don't understand why something that was proposed as a way to take care of your own health, not so much the health of the person next to you. This was meant for your own 95% efficacy. If you get it, you're not even going to be able to know that you had it. That went down in flames. So seeing that, it's like time and time again, seeing the level of inaccuracy to statements and then being proved false time and again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, like, let's be honest. So that's where I think this is really stemming from, is that this is not even so much a fool me twice. This is fool me 6 times now. And you really expect me to still believe you. That is a very tall order. And I think that they really lost a lot of faith, especially with that December, January go through with everything. Like there were a lot of people who thought, well, if I hadn't got those shots, this would have been so much worse. Maybe not. You'll never know. But was it worth?
There's no control group.
Yeah, but the people who are having these all sorts of adverse reactions and stuff, like, if you ask them, would you go back and maybe reconsider this position, especially the people who are having like Bell's palsy and the uncontrollable shakes and stuff, I really do think that they would reconsider their actions.
Myopericarditis, like I found out you have a kill switch inside of you. It's an enzyme. So I didn't experience any cellular death or what happened was my pericardium swelled. It started to make contact with my heart, and my body sent through an enzyme that was just like lights out, which I didn't know that we had. But I mean, the list of adverse reactions, somebody brought up the Pfizer pages. I mean, I encourage the audience to go take a look at that. And that's from the FDA's approval. That's not conspiratorial tin hat or tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theory. Like
Yes.
this is, if anything, go out and hug a conspiracy theorist, because they were kind of pounding on the drum of things that we've watched unfold in the last little while. And
yeah, if you put a scoreboard up of times they were right versus times they were wrong, it's going to be an interesting way, like where that sits. So I completely agree with you. Actually, one of a friend of mine took those Pfizer pages, brought them to her doctor, and says, "I want an exemption. I want an exemption because I don't feel this is safe for me." And
they can't
given that these are the pages from Pfizer, I would like you to give me that exemption. And she got it. She got that exemption based off of that. So just to put that out there to people, I'm not going to say every doctor is going to do that, but I would then want in writing that you are signing off saying that you are okaying this based off of this reality of what these pages present. And that way they are personally responsible. I don't know. It's basically violating their own Hippocratic oath, so they can sit there at night and realize to themselves, who have I sold myself out for? So
I don't know. I hear that. That was something that people brought up in support of what I was going through in the earlier stages. That might work in a small business or medium enterprise, but it's not going to work in a
yes,
corporate environment.
which again speaks to like the level of insanity. Like, that's not good enough for us. What do you mean that's not good enough? It was good enough for my doctor to sign off on it, but how is that not good enough for that? So like, that completely baffles me that you know, I've made a decision. Yeah, I can't. I just oh, blood boiling, instant blood boiling.
I have at my fingertips, and I have printed off some of them, but I have access to 180 plus Freedom of Information Acts that have gone out globally. I believe there's about 37 institutions in Canada. So we're talking universities, Health Canada, and many more. As I said, there's over 180 global institutions that have access to the global database of labs, asking for the purified strands of SARS-2. The purification, not the isolation. They have to take it to the step of purification before they isolate it. Nowhere is there a record of it even being purified. So that means they can't prove it even exists. The computer model to set the PCR test was done off 4 different viruses, and they literally made a computer model out of it. So they can't prove that the original strand exists. So you should be able to take that with the Pfizer documents, and it literally goes hand in hand.
Well, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, prove how this vaccine is going to help me when I can prove, or it's not proven that it even exists, and we clearly can see from these papers that this is not safe.
I think we could get lost in the weeds here pretty quickly when we talk about things like proof and then the substantiation of it, because like we've all perhaps seen in the environment, Jessica, you represented that the language is changing. So as the filter gets tighter and tighter and tighter, they can go back and change the proof, right? So I've seen evidence of that in my own observable reality. What baffled me here in Canada, medically at least, was they were like, oh, you can mix and match. Yeah, go ahead. Astra, get 2 shots of J&J, get another mRNA, and get boosters of whatever one you want. It was like, okay, cool. This is all brand new. Some of those aren't the same technology as the other ones. And did they all just sit in a boardroom together and, share all of their data? There was no proprietary elements of this. There was no profit associated with any of these. You could just go through and hit me with 5 shots of whatever, like mix and match. To me, that is crazy. And that they are representing it as the way to go for kids. That to me, it blows my mind. I think Pfizer Biotech just came out in the Canadian media recently, like maybe even today, saying that 3 shots are safe for 5 to 11-year-olds. That makes my blood boil.
Yes. It's the sacrificing children for the sake of the old, almost like the old, like your grandma killer. If you don't get this, it's like, but did grandma want to experiment on children? Like,
Well, here's
did anyone go to like seniors' homes and just do a poll and say, "Hey, we're going to experiment on children to try to keep you safe"? I really don't think that 80% of them would even be behind that. I couldn't possibly imagine that they would be like, yes, you know what, I'm nearing the end of my life. I had a good run, did everything that I could, hopefully. And now I'd like you to take my grandbabies and make sure that they're not going to, you know, who knows what it'll be a question mark as to what's going to happen in their future. But I want the next 5-10 years of my life to be this. I
well,
don't.
introducing a variable like that to the young, to potentially benefit the elderly, that's a really bad plan. And like, what I'm worried about is like Trudeau bought through Pfizer, I think exclusively, shots through 2024. So I don't see it going away. In fact, I see them trying to do this, a yearly thing. I think Billy Boy Gates said, you're going to have to do it every 6 months, or Dr. Grouchy, all of these people that have been associated, the only people that we have seen that are medical professionals, or experts. They just seem to be the same Rolodex of people on all the mainstream media channels. You don't see qualified specialists, or you don't see a debate, you don't see a panel of experts, or any kind of nuanced conversation about this, which is terrifying to me.
Yes. It's the transgenerational effects that this is going to have. That's going to happen. So, child 5 gets 3 shots, grows up 20, 30, tries to have kids, maybe can have kids. What's going to happen in the genetic line of that? It's the altering of the genes. Whether it's seemingly a small amount, it's still the level of human arrogance to think that they can dabble with that on such a large scale without. It's not even to say like they might have tested this to the extent of they know what's going to happen, and what's available is the lack of information, because if it was to be known about, you never know. So like, are they really just playing roll the dice and see what happens and really having no idea, or do they know potentially and are pretending not to know? Like, is like which one's scarier? Like, I don't know which option is scarier. And
Well,
that's what bothers me, is like this freaks me out. So
we went from follow the science, but you better be following the money. I think that's
yes.
the path to find out what's really going on. I can't have a scientific argument about it. I can relay my own experience, and my partner's experience with COVID that I brought home and ruined Christmas for. But we were sick for 3 days. Is that the same risk factor, or is that the same scenario for everybody else? I don't know. But what I do know is I'm not vaccinated. She's not vaccinated. She has asthma, so I was especially concerned about that. Our symptoms were almost the same, except I recovered, and on day 6, I suddenly lost taste for a matter of days, which was really frustrating. And she got muscle cramps to the like that I didn't have. So, I mean, it's a weird bug.
It was weird. The losing the taste and smell, that was odd. That happened like I think it was around day 6 for me as well too. It's about a week into it. And from one day to the next, it was like fine and then gone. And I was just like, my soup tasted like nothing. I was like eating it. I'm like, this tasted fine yesterday. What the hell happened to this? And then ate a carrot out of it, and I know it's going to taste like a carrot, and it did seem nothing. And I was just like, oh no. And then I went to the peanut butter and tried to eat some peanut butter. I'm like, oh no. And so yeah, it was about like that for about 7 days. At first, when it started coming back, everything smelled dusty. And then everything weirdly smelled like peanut butter for a couple days. And then I started being able to taste chicken. And then from there, and it was fine. So I know that some people, they do have like long haul symptoms, and that's I hope the best for them and that they're able to find, treatments that can help them with getting those things back. But really, for the scare that it was, when we got it, I'll be completely honest. Like, I was stoked, which sounds really strange, but I was just like, finally, like, it's like almost like you get this like build up where it's like, I just now out of morbid curiosity want this, because I just want to see like what this is about. Like, what's the buzz? Like, I just want to know what this is about. And so I was kind of happy I got it, and just to get it over and done with. Like, now I got the antibodies, like, we're good. We can move on. We're good. And so yeah, but I mean, like, and how contagious it was. It took that long. Like, my husband was out in the public seeing people every day, all day throughout 2020. Same with me with clients, every day, all day for years, never got it. Happened to get it at a party because I don't know, we all got it. And I didn't even know, to be honest, I don't know if I actually had it technically, because I didn't take any tests. I refused to take the tests. But two of my girlfriends, one of them works as a teacher and the other one's in social work. And so it was actually the social work one. She had gotten her booster, so she didn't get it. And so, there is something to be said about maybe the protection that a booster can do, but how long that lasts for, and are you going to continue getting boosters for, I think they said the efficacy was like 10 weeks. Or it was effective for 10 weeks. And it's like, so every 10 weeks, you're going to get whatever this is. And I mean, like, again, too, if you want to do that, go right ahead. But there are stabilizers in this. There are things in this that are adding to the preservation of the juice inside of it that's going to do its job. So how much of that over what period of time is going to add up to a totally different issue? So are you exchanging a bad flu for cancer, potentially?
Like anything in excess can kill you, right? Like, you can drink water and die. Like it, but something that I want to build off the back of what you just said is, like, if I got my third booster, if I got my fourth booster, but I stopped at my fifth one and I stopped at my sixth one because it was just like, Jesus, like, like, is this every couple of weeks or every couple of months? Like, enough's enough for me. Are you an anti-vaxxer? And if you're not, why not? Because it doesn't look like you're doing the right thing anymore. And especially with that Pfizer data or the FDA release, it seems like after, I think there's a bit of a threshold, but for the sake of argument, 6 months of efficacy. After 6 months of efficacy, it seems like it's less than 10%, or it's in and around that number. So if you don't re-up, then aren't you putting people at the same level of risk as, say, somebody like myself? And if you're not held in the same camp as somebody like myself, why? Because I don't understand that part. We will sooner come for our neighbors, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our peers, before we ask for a burden of proof from the government or from the medical establishment. And that is lost on me. What I think we have more than an epidemic of pathogen here is an epidemic of cowardice in this country. That not enough people stood up and said, hey, this doesn't smell right. You knew about it. You felt it. You thought about it. But you didn't say anything. And then in your silence is that compliance. And I hope that if we settle in a way that we can have a conversation about this, we look back at that and say, okay, well, next time I will ask that question. Next time I will raise my hand, and next time I won't vilify those that are close to me before I know absolutely for sure what's going on.
Yeah,
that's a really good point.
So I got a question for you, Jordan. Throughout your whole experience, what was kind of your better moment, or something that kind of gave you a moment of hope in your determination, and what was your down moment, kind of like your high and low through everything? I know you're still in the process, but as of this far.
My worst was facing that February deadline, it was causing issues in my relationship, and I'm gonna get in so much trouble. My partner said, like, why are you doing this? You're doing this for your principles. Like, you're doing this to us. Like, take some responsibility here for something more than yourself. Like, effectively suggesting that it was selfish. And she's come around from that. This was like a moment of weakness where she saw my world starting to crumble, and she panicked, and she's just swinging bombs. So that was like the lowest, because it was like, holy shit. Like, I've eaten this from friends. I've eaten this from certainly the professional side. My family doesn't support it, and the like. But that was like a low. And then the positive was the Freedom Convoy. So I've participated in the marches here in Hamilton, in Waterloo, in Toronto, and I went up to Ottawa. And I went up to Ottawa the weekend after the crackdown. So knowing that they had activated the Emergency Measures Act, I felt like that was a very vulnerable time for them to, pay $20,000 to a bunch of flat earthers who are going to go rock swastika sweaters in front of Parliament. And then that's it for the movement. And through every stage of my experience and interactions with these people, it was nothing but love, positivity, compassion, and empathy. And even when I got to Ottawa, there was no evidence of the convoy. It was the weekend after. They had removed the Emergencies Measure Act the Wednesday or whatever, and I left on the Friday. But there was no militancy. There was no animosity about what had happened there. I networked with some factions that were, still there. And then there was, other protesters that were, just scattered around the municipality, basically. And not a word of hostility or, a call to arms or anything like that. So that was really encouraging. I was really proud that Canada got together and seemed to like band together around that. And the frequency or the vibration of it, like, it was emanating positivity, compassion, and empathy, and that was really encouraging.
Yes, I've been to protests too, and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's I would say borderline addictive. It was just like to feel that, especially after such a polarizing experience of, stay in your home, stay away from people, stay away from your loved ones, don't go near anybody. And then to be around that many people, feeling that much love and the want to have contact with other human beings. It was something totally else. It was very good. At one in Toronto, actually in the one that we went to in Ottawa, that was February 14th, 2021. And there was like music on. I got to dance with people, and I hadn't been dancing so long. And then there was one in Toronto where they put on music afterwards, and it was dancing. It was great. And I absolutely loved it. And it was just such a feeling of being alive again and being with people who wanted to feel alive. So it was great. And so, yes, I completely, I'm on the same page with you with that, with just the feeling of the high of a highlight. And so just to just to bring this back a little bit to your work experience, what tools would you, so for people experiencing the same kind of issues that you went through, what kind of tools would you recommend to them, like that are in the same way? Sorry, I'm hard time verbalizing that, if that makes sense. Like, what would you recommend to them if they're going through the same kind of thing?
It's a loaded question, and I don't think I handled it well. I still got to get lab work into my doctor. There was a lot of drinking. There was trying to escape it. It infected every element of my daily life. I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole as far as I went, but I felt compelled to. I don't think I handled it well because I was just doing it as a survivor. So What I feel good about now is that I stuck to my guns. I set some boundaries. I didn't lash out, and I hope that this isn't perceived as such. And that's why I'm trying not to really paint them as the bad guy. I want to have a constructive conversation about this with people so that this can never happen again. And sticking to your principles, standing up for what you believe in, having the courage to ask a question or push back a little. Those are things that I'm thankful that I did. And without love and support, I don't know that I would have been able to get through it on my own.
That's good. So having a good support network and kind of remembering what you're fighting for. I'm almost even thinking that for people who are in that position, write it down. Write down, why are you doing this? You have to have a physical reminder, because sometimes if you keep it all in your head can be both your friend and your enemy at many times. And so having a physical reminder written out at a time when you're feeling strong can help you at a time when you're feeling a momentary weaknesses.
So I actually did do that. That's where epidemic awareness comes from. And I wrote another, like, I didn't do anything with this. This is effectively an exercise in journaling or articling, or I don't know. I put one of them on Facebook, but what are we without freedom was another way of, just starting there and working out your own head on paper. And you don't have to share it with anybody. Nobody has to see it, but just organize your own thoughts about it so that you're confident that you're confident in your own opinion, that your opinion has merit, but be humble enough that when presented with new evidence, you can change that opinion.
Yes, absolutely. It's knowing where you stand and that you're not being pig-headed, that this is truly where you feel you're aligned with, and that you're not compromising your own principles in any way, both for yourself and against yourself.
Yeah, and then, I mean, the elephant in the room is that the freedoms and the rights that disappear today, the future generations have no idea that those even existed. You never get that back. So, yes. I mean, what is it to stand up and put your hand up and ask a question? But to those that weren't able to do that, like, my heart does go out to them, because I heard Chrystia Freeland say in the House, like, the anti-vaxxers shouldn't get EI. So if I lose my job, and I had interviewed, and that was in a customer-facing sales role, a non-starter. So that would be asked in an interview, and I would be forthcoming with that information. And they'd say, "Hey, look, seems like you got some skills, but we can't bring you on board. That we just can't move it farther than here." And that was to keep going through that. That was hard.
Yeah. Yes, we just had a couple of comments coming in. Just somebody had lost their job in the oil field, and yeah, that this is a hard hitting thing, and for it to make itself precedent within conversation on just an interview level, it's like you wouldn't ask somebody if they have a history of herpes. You know what I mean? Like, how is that even remotely conversational topic, let alone like in a job interview? It's just none of your business. That's where that is. And so I think that's all the questions I think we had, and that's all we had from our chat. I'd just like to thank you again for coming on and being so transparent about your experience, and for giving an opportunity to our viewers to see a very neutral standpoint as to, this is what I did, this is what happened, and this is where I'm at right now. I think that's extremely valuable for people to get that insight. I think there's just way too much inflammatory stuff nowadays, and I think this was just a very good way of a very truthful, honest view of what this type of situation is looking like from the inside.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity. I know that Kim's not here, but send my love to her as well for setting this up. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion like this. I'm still kind of working it out in my head as well. Hopefully we get to reconnect, and I have something a little bit more positive to share with you guys after.
That'd be fantastic. Well, we'd love to have you on again. So, if you find that there's any major, maybe major changes or anything like that, just let us know, and we'd love to, like I said, have you on again and talk about it some more.
Thanks, Gail.
Yep. Thank you so much. Also, to anyone out there that is, has a business, because we're all about business, with We Are All Essential. We have a network, and you can go to weareallessential.ca. You can join the network. You don't have to go public. There's a lot of information to go through in the back end. You can educate yourself, and then when you're ready to go public, go ahead. We're also looking for a support team, volunteers, but more important, a support team to help those businesses stand strong and make sure that we have a lot of like-minded businesses staying open. This way, we can help people not go through the situation that Jordan's going through at this moment. But it was very good information coming from Jordan to let us know why we have to band together as businesses in order to push back on these concepts and ideas. And I think we all need to really take a step back and realize that the freedoms of choice, especially, have been annihilated in our beautiful Canada, where we're supposed to be one of the freest nations on the planet, yet we're watching workplaces discriminate against us. So come on, join us. We do Zooms, get involved, volunteer. We're looking for all the support. The more shoulders, the better to carry this on. Also, like this video, subscribe to it, and share it. Let's get this message out there. Share it to everybody. Share it all across your pages. Very important to get the messages out there as they come out. With all this shadow banning and everything that's going on. But at least we're all joining each other at the base or the bottom of Facebook news feeds, so we can have a party down there. So
good way of putting it, Jake. That's where all the fun happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're all at. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Share the episode, like it, and come back next week. We always have good stuff in store.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Thanks,
have a great night, everybody.
Okay, we'll see y'all later.